Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Michael Shane, and today I want to discuss reasons why beta sororities aren't for everyone. I see a lot of information kind of going around now, and it's becoming a lot more popular for people to have beta sororities, and people are just very interested in them at the moment. But unfortunately, this isn't a novelty tank to have. It can become very stressful at times, and there are things nobody's really talking about. So I want to get into some of those things, so before you try and set it up, you already are aware of some issues that you might run into prior to even deciding to do it. So one of the first things I run into with people telling me that they failed in a beta sorority is I ask them what tank size they were using. And they say, I did my research, so I started out with a 10-gallon tank. Well, unfortunately, a 10-gallon tank is only half the size that you need. I would suggest nothing underneath a 20-gallon traditional tank. Mine is a 20-gallon standard, so it worked out for me. I didn't start in something any smaller than this, and I would never suggest anyone else start in something smaller than this. I would suggest, however, maybe going with a 20-gallon long if you have the room for it and you find a good deal on one. Now, a 10-gallon tank sounds large enough, but unfortunately there's just not enough room for them to establish enough territory, and once you put enough decor in there, you're just not even going to be able to see your fish anymore, and now you have a tank that doesn't look like there's anything living in it. The other problem with a 20-gallon tank, though, is kind of the fact that a lot of places, unfortunately, have rental agreements that state you can't have any tank over the size of 10 gallons. I get this a lot from people where I work. They'll come in and say, I can only have a 10-gallon, but I really want to do a beta tank. What can I do with it? And a lot of times they end up getting one male beta fish, maybe a couple of tank mates. I know that neon tetras are a good choice. A lot of people go with that because they move around quite a bit, and they're schooling fish. They like the center of the tank, whereas beta fish like the surface a lot more. So that works out for a lot of people, and it's a great option if you're not able to have a 20-gallon at this time. The other issue would be the fact that a 20-gallon tank, though it doesn't sound very large, is actually really heavy. So if you know that you're going to be moving in the next year or two, I wouldn't suggest doing a 20-gallon tank, just because it's kind of a pain to move. I'm about to move this tank, which is why I'm doing this video now, and I'm only moving it approximately a foot, and it's still going to take me and my spouse to move this thing. We're going to have to drain the water out just to move it. That's not a lot of fun, it's just not easy to do, and it can be very uncomfortable for not only you, but the fish. The next issue I seem to encounter is when people discover you can't use a 10-gallon tank because that will be unsuccessful. Well, now it's going to cost you a lot more money than you originally planned. You, of course, can do this tank for a little bit cheaper if you go secondhand, like on Craigslist or a marketplace near you. So if you go secondhand, it might come out to being close to a 10-gallon, but you do need to be careful to make sure any of the equipment that you purchase, you test beforehand and ensure that it's working. For these tanks, you need a pretty good heater. You're going to need a good thermometer, which doesn't come at a high price. You can get one for around $3. Unless you want a digital one, then it's around $10, which still isn't that bad. But you're also going to need a precise filter. You're going to need one that can handle the load, but not have a high enough filter or intake where the output is just tossing these fish around. Same thing as the males. The females aren't exactly great swimmers. So with the price of this kind of climbing as you go through the whole idea, I want to say my tank, which would not be a showpiece, I would not go and just stick this in my living room. I'm pretty sure my spouse would hate that idea, as it's not as attractive as she would probably want, but it still cost me somewhere around $200 to set up this tank. Now, that's not too bad if you count the fact that that includes the cost of my fish. But still, $200 is a little steep for, say, a teenager who's just starting out in the hobby, or someone who's in college and kind of living paycheck to paycheck. So a 10-gallon community tank would still probably be a better idea. The next issue people run into is they tell me that their fish are fighting and they can't get them to stop. What do I suggest to fix this issue? My main suggestion is to make sure you have enough decor in this whole tank. And if you don't have enough decor, what's going to happen? These fish are constantly going to be in the same line of sight. If I can see the person that I want to fight with at all times, eventually we're going to fight. And unfortunately with fish, that's to the death. They will rip each other apart, they will injure one another, and now you'll have sick fish in your tank, which could potentially infect the entire tank, killing off the entire project, not only upsetting you, but putting those fish through a pretty horrible situation, which isn't fair to yourself or the animals that you have taken into your care. The proper amount of decor for this tank would be a minimum of 1 hiding spot per fish, plus some pretty heavy plant coverage. Now, I've gotten lucky with the fish that I have. I went through and hand-selected each fish until I got just the right setup and the right personalities all in one tank to allow for them to be quite peaceful. And with that being said, I was able to leave kind of the front of the tank as like a play area for them. They love to play with moss balls and other small objects you place in the tank as long as you make sure their aquarium's safe. And it's a lot of fun to watch, and it does give you a good viewing space. So it probably is one of my more attractive tanks. But I still have very heavy coverage throughout my entire tank, so that if one fish is bullying another, that other fish can get away. And it's not quite as stressed out and just upset with its environment, causing it to get sick or just stop eating altogether. Which leads me into the last issue I want to discuss. The amount of time it is going to take to observe this tank. So when you first set it up, I'm sure you've done your research well enough to know that you do need to observe it for a few days and up to 2 weeks to make sure that the fish are not being overly aggressive. You are going to have some aggression throughout the entire life of this tank, but the truth is, in the first week is where it should be its worst. Within the first few hours is definitely going to be the peak time that they're going to fight one another. But you don't want to see is fin nipping, ripping of any anal fins or dorsals. This is how they're telling you, I don't like this fish and I want to be rid of it. So you don't want to see that. What you want to see is fish coming to the surface. They'll kind of turn around backwards and slap each other with their fins. And this is just letting that other fish know, hey, I'm the boss. One of the fish is going to win and one's going to lose, and eventually a pecking order will be decided. Unfortunately, sometimes this aggression level goes way too high, and you do have to scrap the project, remove the fish. Sometimes you can reintroduce them to the habitat by changing it around, and they'll be fine. Other times it will never work out, and you have to remove those fish and rehome them. Maybe have 5 extra tanks set up, or you actually have to find new people who can take these fish in. This is not unusual to take place. I've heard a lot of people say that it does happen, but without the right amount of decor, it's just not going to work out for you. So just make sure that every fish can have its own territory, be comfortable, and break that line of sight when necessary. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit the little notification bell, and follow me on my other social media where you'll get to see cute images of my other pets and stay up to date on any other videos coming, as well as getting to help me decide on some videos you'd like to see. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you again next time.